Hi, and welcome to another episode of Can't Stop the Growth. I'm your host, Chad Peterman, and today we have a very special guest who resides as our neighbor to the north here in the great state of Michigan. Really excited. Was at this guy's shop, about maybe less than a year ago to check out what they were doing. Just he and his brother really doing some awesome stuff. So excited to welcome to the podcast today the president of Service Professor in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Brad Krause. Welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate you having me today. Nice seeing you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good seeing you as well. As hopefully things are looking to get back to somewhat normal. I'm not sure how they look up there in Michigan. Maybe a little less normal than here.
Well, I think that's the general consensus with Michigan as anyone, right? But we're tracking nicely. We're getting there for sure.
Brett, why don't you, as I said at the outset, obviously run a really good company up there. My brother and I were up there to visit not too long ago. Tell us a little bit about maybe how you got into the trades. I know your story, but tell the listeners a little bit about your story, how you got into it, and then kind of what you're up to now.
Yeah, so I'm the middle child of three boys. So our father still is. He's still around. He was a master electrician, owned his own company called G&D Electric, kind of a traditional contractor, if you will. So it's really kind of all we knew, growing up. And I guess I was the only one that, I don't know, I'll say dumb enough, but followed in the old man's footsteps into the trades. The way that it sat, it really was probably a silly decision back then, just the way that the trades operate in general. And then obviously fast forward so many years and you find great best practices like Nexstar and stuff, and you realize there's a better way, similar to you and everybody at Peterman. So kind of followed my dad's footsteps, became an electrician, started Service Professor. Actually, it was called the Electric Professor originally, because that's all we did was electrical back in 2004. And then we launched plumbing services in 2012. So of course the Electric Professor is no longer cool. So we changed it to the Service Professor. So we still had the in the name then. And then in 2013, my younger brother, Tony, who much smarter than I, had his master's in accounting. So he's a CPA by craft and working in the CPA game. And I convinced him somehow over a round of golf, I still remember it, to come aboard and really explode this thing. So because in college, I'd probably say one of my least favorite classes was accounting. So it worked out nice to have an accountant on the staff, right? So we brought him in, launched HVAC in 2014. And then I remember in 2015, kind of a landmark we like to joke around in the company is he walked in my office and he just said, Service Professor, just Service Professor, dropped the. And he walked away. And it was straight out of a scene of The Social Network, if you remember that, right? That's how Facebook, people don't know, but it used to be called The Facebook. And that's when the old CEO of Napster, right? Is that what's called, Napster?
Yeah.
He came into Zuckerberg and played by Justin Timberlake in the movie. And that's how he said it to him, was just Facebook. So we renamed the company to just Service Professor. We dropped the. And we've been in between 15 and now we've added duct cleaning and sewer replacement services, drain services, duct sealing. So we kind of run the gamut. We do just about everything in somebody's home.
Awesome stuff. I'm sure your brother Tony would be happy to know that you compared him to Justin Timberlake, as anyone would. If you got to pick someone to play you in, the movie of your life, I think he's got to be up there near the top, I would think, unless you're more of a Clooney guy or something like that. But no, I'm sure he'd be happy about that.
Let me add to that real quick because you're gonna love this.
Yeah.
You know Tony well. If you remember Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement, he looks just like him, and that was his nickname in high school. Was Jonathan Taylor Thomas. So comparing him to JT, it might not be too far off. I don't know. We'll give him some.
Yeah. He does. Now that you say it, he definitely does resemble him a little bit. I never thought of that. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. But as it relates to, we'll stay on Tony here for a little bit. So I guess you bring him into the fold. He's got the accounting background. Tell us a little bit about that dynamic. I think one of the questions that I get most often is, what's it like to work with your brother? So I'll pose the same question to you in really this in kind of the lens of kind of the leadership. So how do you guys kind of balance your styles for leading when it comes to running Service Professor?
Yeah, it's gone well. It goes well. I have nothing ill to say about our relationship as, certainly as brothers. We're practically best friends. I mean, we do just about everything together. We have a lot in common. Very similar, but yet very different. And I think that's extremely healthy. I think our differences are more relatable to business, actually. Um, him being the numbers guy, I tend to choose deliberately not to hang out with numbers guys in my personal life, right? Like that's the joke and the pun I give him all the time. But it's kind of yin and yang type thing. I think he's by no stress. He's definitely not an introvert, but I think in business he's looked at as the introvert, not the extrovert, right? I'm kind of the blah guy. I'm the not blah, but the splat against the wall, see if it works. I'm the visionary, and he's definitely the implementer. He can make sure my wild ideas get executed well. So yin and yang as far as that goes, and just works out really well. I mean, I think in any organization, especially as you scale, you have to have somebody that has their thumb on the numbers at all times. And me and the way my personality works, and being a red personality as it relates to color code and different things. I like the summary. I like the Cliff Note version, right? So I like summarized reports, not putting the report together. And that's where him and I differ. He's very talented when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head as it relates to partners, whether siblings or not. I think finding someone who complements you is extremely important, rather than two people who run kind of the same, run in the same vein as far as strengths go. And my brother and I are very similar in that respect too. He would rather be out in the field helping guys and doing whatever it is operationally, whereas I'm kind of like you. Hey, I just need to see, here's my idea, let's go make it happen. And usually as he sits across the way is, hey, here's my great idea, how do we make that happen? And so I think that's extremely important when it comes to partners, like I said, whether siblings or not. What you mentioned, visionary and integrator, and I think this is something that I've gotten better at. Tell me a little bit about maybe your transformation as a leader into that visionary role. Was there ever a time when you didn't identify with that, or kind of what was the path of progression to where you are now? Obviously, very comfortable in that particular role.
Yeah, it was quite a transition for me. Very heavy in operations most of my career. I think as you scale, you can start putting key roles into place, right? You can afford them. I mean, let's just start there. But the business has to have a need for them as well. And as we grew, one of the best business decisions we ever made was to get into EOS and follow the traction method of running a business, and that was a game changer. And we realized, and in our EOS coach, Ken Bogart, who's just amazing. He's an amazing man. He identified us right away. Like he can just meet a leadership team and go, all right, you're this person, you're that person, just based off personality. So, and I think, not only with Tony being on the team, but then Dan Bremer, he's our operations manager. I'd put him up against anybody, just uber talented, super smart. And he's just taken a ton of load operationally off from me. So he's our operations manager and really runs the company. I mean, he really does. And so, but I think at first, Chad, I think a guy that's so used to having his hands in everything and every decision and everything with operations, it was a hard transition for me because you feel like you're, as they say in EOS, letting go of the vine. And letting go of that vine was very, very difficult because it was just something I was so accustomed to. And I think in 12 months later, quick 12 months later, I've become, pretty adjusted and pleasantly surprisingly happy and pleased with the new role for sure.
Yeah, I went through a similar transition as we were growing, and I feel like, and I don't know what you really. I'll just kind of open it up to your thoughts. When did you kind of know that you needed to release that operational side, and then kind of what did you see after that kind of initial anxiety was there?
Yeah, I mean, for guys like us, it's really difficult to recognize that. I would wager a bet that most of us who are presidents and owners and stuff like that, we hold on to it for so long because we just don't ever think there's an opportune time, right? Letting go of that vine is very difficult, and I'm sure we're all tardy in making that decision. Guaranteed. I certainly know I was. I wish it would have happened 3 years ago, but I think for us it was really more trusting somebody with that role. And we just happen to, I would say, lucky. We're lucky. We've had Dan for 12 years. He's started as an electrical apprentice with us, worked his way up through the ranks, and he was electrical manager for the last 6-7 years, something along those lines, before we moved him into operations. And he was just kind of we looked outside. We really did. I interviewed, and I just said, I can't trust this with anybody but Dan. I think I was interviewing more just to solidify the decision I already knew I was going to make in promoting Dan. So we got lucky that he was already in the organization. But, still, he had worked with us and beside me for so long in his own department. It was just at a bigger scale, and he just kind of stepped right in and ran with it. So it worked well. But yeah, it definitely wasn't anxiety free. We still check in daily. He's across the hall from me. We're talking all the time. So, but it's nice to go, yeah, that's the decision you made. It's exactly what I would have done. Whether we right or wrong, it makes you feel better when it was what, in your line of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think one of the things that I noticed most was like, you get to a point where like, if you take a step back, you realize that you're causing more havoc than problems that you're actually solving because of how we're naturally ingrained to think. As the leader, it's come up with a new idea, really moving fast pace. I need the Cliff Notes version, where at the end of the day, if you're going to implement an idea, you need process, you need procedure. And what I found is that when I got out of the operational and just said, hey, I'm just going to be over here, I'm going to offer ideas, I'm going to create the vision, create the culture for the company, and you guys carry this out however you see fit. We got a heck of a lot more done, and it was a hell of a lot more efficient because I wasn't in the middle, just not crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's like should have been done. Mm-hmm. And, I think too, and I'd like you to speak a little bit to this because, you mentioned Dan, and I've met Dan, a very hard driver, has everything kind of in its place and ready to go. What would you say? So I would give you more credit than you gave yourself there, as far as, for someone to start as an electrical apprentice and then work their way up to, I don't know what his general manager or whatever his title is now, running the show, as you said. In order for someone to do that, you have to have a culture that supports that. What would you say that are some of the key things that you guys do there at Service Professor that, really help kind of cultivate that culture of growth and getting better and taking on responsibility? What would you guys say that are some really key points that you feel are really driving in that direction?
Well, I think there's a lot of things, Chad, the list is pretty long, but, just starting off with, creating a high-fiving atmosphere. That's just who we are. And we're like a football team, it's just, we're always very congratulatory. We celebrate our wins, and we talk about our failures and how we're going to make it into a win next time. That's just the culture that we have. And I think, it comes from a leadership standpoint. I think, with Dan, I think Dan's a great example. Keep chatting about Dan. Dan's he's such a red personality. There's not a color red that he is. He's so red, and I appreciate that mentality because that's who I am, right? But seeing his transformation in exercising patience and not going rogue and going cowboy when he gets upset, like that kind of thing, right? Like he's just a great leader now because he's made that decision to improve and listen to podcasts, surround himself with great people like yourself, and just learn, and said, all right, there's a better way. I'm 90% of the way there. How do I fix the other 10%? Right. So I think just having the motivation, having a place where people just want to work, they generally seed themselves, like deep down, they seed it into themselves to go, hey, I can, if I choose to be an HVAC installation tech for my entire career, great. That's what makes me happy. And I tell all of them that. We have several processes in there. along the onboarding process, several meetings and different things where we discuss this stuff. Where I don't care what you want to do. I literally have three of our 7 core values come from the book Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni, Hungry, Humble, and Smart. And that's mandatory reading when somebody joins. And we actually do a book review. We give them 2 weeks to read it. And I can count on one hand how many people haven't read it in that 2 weeks. It doesn't usually go very well because that shows a lack of hunger, right? It's pretty hard to violate one of the core values. But and we sit down and talk about it with their manager and myself, or Tony, if I'm not available. And we have an Ideal Team Player book meeting. And I tell every one of them sitting in there, I've sat on a yoga ball for better part of 10 years from an old sports injury, right? Lower back injury. So I've always sat on this yoga ball. It's kind of the thing. Brad sits on a ball. And I sit across the desk from him, and I always tell him, I says, hey, if you want to be a call center rep your entire career, I mean, that's awesome. That's what makes you happy. We've got your back. We're going to make you the best darn call center rep ever, right? But just know that if you want something different, where you're working for a growing organization that's crazy enough to want to keep growing and want additional headaches and just keep dominating, that's who we are. And as we do that, our accountability chart gets larger, and we have to create more positions, et cetera. And I always say, if your goal is to sit on this ball someday, come get this ball. This is yours to have. I will not be here forever. The day that somebody can do this job better than me is the day I'm meant to leave. And whoever wants that job, it's yours to have. This organization, it's endless what your possibilities are, right? But you just have to be that person that's impossible not to promote. Just be that person, and you'll go wherever you want. So just creating that culture, letting them know right on the front end within 2 weeks of working for us that, you could be the president of this company. I tell every one of them with 100% conviction, you're better at this job than I am. I'd be foolish not to put you in this spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on so many great things there that listeners can take back to their organization and really make an impact quickly. Yeah, the Lencioni book, Ideal Team Player, that's something that we have utilized as well. And just a really good, it's super easy read, which makes it even better. I think it really gets down to to the nuts and bolts of what it takes to be successful, is hungry, humble, smart. Tell me a little bit about, I think you touched on something else from a leadership perspective that's extremely important, at least in my eyes, is creating a path for development, in giving people the resources to continue to grow, continue to chase whatever it is that they need to chase. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do to develop your people there.
Yeah, anything and everything. As far as if somebody says, hey, you can kind of tell. I mean, this, you can tell when somebody's maybe destined for management or whatever the case might be. We always promote within first. Every job is posted internally for anybody to go after. If anybody wants to take leadership classes, we've got one of our managers that's going to be taking a emotional intelligence class that we talked to him about, and we just figured it was right for him, and he wanted to take it to improve. And that's a company expense that just makes good sense, right? So obviously within Nexstar, all the trainings that are available there, we've considered with our new edition that's coming up on HQ to, put in a leadership library, right? So where anybody that's just destined for, I think I may have stolen that idea from you guys, actually. Pretty sure I did, actually. But just to head along those lines where they can check books out and different things that, I have a library in my office, and I have technicians come in there on the regular and say, hey, what do you have for, financial freedom? What books do you recommend? And I just, here, take this one, right? And it's just, I think it's the right thing to do to grow them the best you can, but they have to want it as well, right? I think just transparency that you can do whatever you want, and we're going to help you get there regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, leadership boiled down is to develop your people, is to mold them into the best version of themselves, to allow them to chase their potential. Tell me a little bit about, and I want you to talk about this because I want to kind of brag on you, because I feel like this program here, you guys have dialed in better than anybody. Tell me a little bit about what you do for your employees regarding the 401k and kind of, you mentioned it there, financial freedom, because that is something I stole from you. And I've got the book actually is right on my shelf. So actually someone may be using the book that you recommended, but tell me a little bit about that program and how you present it to your people and kind of the impact that it's had.
Yeah, so the first Friday of every month, as a matter of fact, we have one this Friday, tomorrow. We have a bagel. It's called Bagels with Brad. So we have a 4-hour onboarding core values, and we call it the core values meeting. But part of that, one of my favorite sections, of course, talking about core values and letting them know the expectation. And of course, that's with me, with all the newbies every month. And we have about an hour section that's related to their financial freedom, right? Tony and I were blessed to have a father that ingrained this in us at a very young age. I mean, it's just how it was. We had to save money. If we got money for our birthdays and different things, we didn't get to spend it. Like, we saved it. I would often joke around because Tony and I actually have an older brother who was the better athlete of the three of us. And, his senior year, he's a couple years my elder, but he was, how you have the voting for your senior class, best car, most likely to succeed, all that. He was voted best body. Okay. Guy had a 12-pack, right? I mean, he was Rip City, and he was voted best body. He was proud as all get out. But my dad will tell you that he was most proud because Tony and I were voted cheapest in our class. Okay, so that stigma followed the Krauses. So we hold that against our older brother, but we were just blessed to have that from a young age and understanding what it means to save money and be financially free. So we instill that in our employees. I truly believe that a financially free employee is a happy employee. What do they say? It's the number 5 reason for divorce. I mean, it's rabid throughout, the 90% or whatever the percentage is, you could probably quote me better, but of Americans that don't have, over $1,000 in their savings account or something crazy like that, right? That just adds undue stress to you every day. So we discuss that. I take them through a 401k calculator, and I love it when I have some very young apprentices in the room, maybe 18, 19, 20 years old, because I run them through the calculator of what it means even to put $2,000 away, let's say, right? And we hear it all the time. We used to hear it all the time of, oh, Brad, you don't understand. I got my truck payment. I'll start 401k next year, right? So I run them through that scenario. Let's just say you say that when you're 19 because you bought the truck, right? As Dave Ramsey says, the truck. And you don't start, you delay your start in 401k by a year, and that $2,000 really becomes, $100,000 through compounding interest over, a 45-year period from 20 to 65 at a 7% average rate of return. I take them through all of that. And then I say, all right, well, look, you retire with $2.4 million or whatever. Now, let's just say you checked in with our financial advisor, who is 100% accessible to all of our employees at all time. And I make sure that's our agreement. If they call, you drop everything, you take care of them, right? If you do that biannual meeting that we recommend with Greg, our financial advisor is Greg, and your average rate to return when you're 65 ended up being 8%. Let's just click that up, because 7%, as you know, is very modest, throughout your career. Let's just say it goes to 8%. Look, it jumps to $3.1 million because you paid attention to it just twice a year, right? And made better investment choices where you're allocating your money. So we just take them through all of that, and their eyes just are huge, they just open wide, because they had no idea by putting, such a limited amount of money away that's very doable for most people, can be millions of dollars start now, right? And so we're at like a 92, 93% participation rate for 401k. And more, I apologize. Let me rephrase that. We're closer to 80% overall in the company. But newbies within 6 months of employment, we have like a 95% success rate now, since we've kind of tailored that Bagels with Brad conversation to their financial freedom.
That is awesome. And I think that that really shows your guys' commitment to, again, developing the whole person, not just giving them, technical training on how to diagnose a furnace. It's how to, through this career, affect your total life. And I think the one thing that you said there that really caught my attention was, just showing them their eyes lighting up. And I think as leaders, we need to go for more of those moments where the people that we're leading, their eyes light up, because they're seeing their potential, they're seeing what's out there, because they don't know what they don't know. And, we are in charge of showing them showing them that way. And I think that's one of, if I've seen, one of the biggest kind of hurdles for new leaders is understanding that of what their job is. What would you say is maybe something where you've seen, leaders in your own organization or just wherever, but what are those things that you see, people newer into leadership roles really struggle with?
Well, I think, especially younger leaders, I think there's a level of maturity that does come along with being a good leader. There just does. I mean, certainly you take my 41-year-old self now and compare it to my 25-year-old self when I was running the company. It's a different person, right? So there's a level of maturity that comes along with it. But I think, so control is one thing. You don't have to be, especially depending on your personality, which you and I both know 75+% of entrepreneurs and leaders and stuff are red personalities, right? We're stronger go-getters. That's just who we are. But there's some negative that comes along with that, impatience, control, and letting go of that vine, again, using that terminology, just really, really helps, I think, set everybody else around you at ease a little bit. And I think the other thing is something that younger people don't have. I think it's just you either have it or you don't. But I believe a leader just simply has to have a very vibrant personality, right? I think most great leaders are attractive people that, when I say attractive, just people, you almost have your own gravitational pull. You walk into a room, you're the guy that walks up to somebody you don't know and introduces yourself. There's very few great introvert leaders, I think. I think you have to have that personality as well that inspires people, if you will. They are out there, no doubt, the introverted personalities that become great leaders. But I think by and large, you're going to see more of them be very much an extrovert. So I think, and that's something you really can't change. I mean, you kind of are who you are, right? That's one of those things that's very, very difficult. You can improve it, but I don't think you'll ever, flop to the other side, if you will, just because you want to.
Yeah, and I would tack onto that because I think you make a great point there about being kind of that extrovert personality. I would consider myself an introvert, but when it comes to leadership, and I've told my team this many a times, if I had my way, I could be in my office with the door shut all day long. Like that's where I could be, and I could be perfectly happy. My wife always kids like, if I gave you anything, if you could ask for anything, it would probably be just like peace and quiet on the back porch. I'm like, kind of, and I think that, to your point, you have to be willing to be who your people need you to be for them. If you're an introvert, you're going to have to get out of your shell. I know that walking around when I get in the morning, and as you called it, a high five culture, saying hi to everybody, making sure everybody's doing good, having a positive attitude, having a good outlook, all of those things, you don't have to be fake about it. But you've got to be out there. You've got to be present. You've got to be out there for your people. And I think a lot of that comes to, I always phrase it like this, being an introvert myself, I always phrase it as, I have to be an extrovert when it comes to showing that I care. Because it's very difficult to be an introvert and show that you care. And 90% of leadership is showing that you care. That's when you're going to get people to follow you. I think that's a great point there. And then the maturity piece too, the ability to, put others before yourself, to, shy away from having to have the glory and giving others the glory, allowing them to see where it is that they're going.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, if you're labeling yourself as an introvert, you had me fooled. I've seen your videos of your company speeches and stuff. So you definitely pour it on when you need to. So nice work there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, that's not that for me, that's not like being someone that I'm not. It's just being a little bit different for different situations. Kind of call it a chameleon, if you will, of, when I need to be like that. And then when I enjoy my peace and quiet and, my quiet time, which is good.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, and you have kids now, right? So,
oh yeah. I got one on the way. 5 weeks and 3 days, I think, was the count this morning for my wife.
Getting close. All right. That's number two. That's number two, right?
Yep, for sure.
So you ask any father, that, especially one that runs a business, if peace and quiet means something to them, I think you're going to get 100% hands raised for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, there's no doubt. I always enjoy when my wife picks up my daughter from daycare, because her daycare is not far from the office. But if I have something that takes me close to home, and she ends up that 25 minutes of sitting on the couch in pure silence is quite fun, or not having to watch whatever the cartoon of the week is, and can flip on Sports Center is a lovely time.
As you
Um,
know, I have four, right, Chad? So
yeah,
it's not welcomed anytime for sure.
yeah. There's always something going on. What I guess to dive a little bit more into you as the leader. What's one thing, leadership wise, that you're really kind of obsessed is the wrong word, but one thing you're kind of into right now? I know I go through phases where, like, one, I'm reading books or listening to podcasts, or whatever it is. What's the one thing that you're kind of into right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, we all have the flavor of the month, if you will, right? You read a great book. One recently was Matthew McConaughey's memoir, The Green Lights. I don't know if you've read that yet, but that was pretty stellar, because I'm a big fan of his. So that was cool. Took some things from that. That was very exceptional. But one thing that just never goes away is just being the hype man. I mean, I think I'm labeled as the hype man of the company. I love it. I'm a trainer for Next Star, right? I'm master trainer for Next Star. So I love being in front of a room, motivating people. So a big thing now with, summer break and stuff, and obligations of getting kids to school in the morning, or, obviously I'm obsolete at this point. So I'm at the office every morning to, high five the guys out in the shop and different things of that nature. Our marketing team and our culture cultivator in our company, Nikki, have stepped up their game with, it's an extension of my arm. They work with me on this kind of stuff because they know I love it and I'm into it. Our company party is just being incredible. We have a party coming up where it's adults only, just husband and wives. We're, renting out a movie theater outdoor space. We're gonna have food trucks there, and just for adults here coming up. We're doing what's it called? Sneak attack, kind of like snack attack, right? So snack attack it's called. So every week we're surprising technicians on the field with a snack box. We set it on their seat or grab them off the job site. So we're doing a lot of that kind of stuff, just hyping them up, and I tell all of our people, it's not being somebody I'm not. It's who I am. I want to be in a good mood all the time. That's how I choose to live, and surround myself with those that choose to live that way as well. There's just nothing better than being in a good mood. And I tell them all, and I tell all my classes that I facilitate for Next Star, that human behavior is when you see somebody acting like that they're just in a great mood, right? You think to yourself, because you're not, that there's a reason for it. You're like, oh, well, that person must make more money than I, or their kids must be better behaved. That's what it is, than mine are, right? Or, their spouse is better looking than mine, whatever it might be, right? Like we draw reasons as to why that is. And I just call BS to that. And I tell them, I said, do you really think that I have any less problems than you? It's all in how you look at it. It's all perspective and how you deal with it and how you choose to go about your day. Like, you can choose to be miserable. You can choose to be great. It doesn't mean I'm burying my head in the sand with all the issues that I have going on, because I certainly have issues, within my own family, like every other human being, and business, and the guy cut me off in traffic. Like, it all happens to me too, right? But I choose to have a different outlook. And I'm not perfect, because it takes a lot of effort, but I try as hard as possible, because, and so I just encourage our people, don't look at it in that light. People are choosing to be in a great mood, and you have that choice too, and never forget that.
I could not have said it better myself. Jared's probably heard me say, who's recording the podcast, he's probably heard me say a million times, as he's recorded just about every other word I say, it seems. But I always am a huge believer in that we all have a choice. If you want to be, as you said earlier, you want to be the president of the company, you got a choice. You can be. Are people given certain things? Do they have certain talents? Do they have certain blessings? 100%. But I would tell you that your will and desire, your hunger, as we've talked about earlier, it'll get you a lot of places that you never thought possible. If you simply make the choice that is what you're going to do, and you're going to do everything humanly possible to get where you want. As it relates to that, tell me a little bit about how you guys craft the choice to be a great company. I assume that you and Tony kind of craft some sort of vision of where you want to go and have a plan and attack. You seem very calculated and very understanding of this is what we need to do, A, B, C, and then we're going to get here. What do you guys do from as leaders to kind of set that path for the company? Are there any certain things that you do or like exercises or anything that you could speak on?
Yeah, and I'm gonna before I answer that question, it's a great question. I'm gonna compound and add to the what we were just talking about as far as choosing your attitude and different things. If that's okay.
Yeah.
The net effect, the trickle down effect of what that has. I always tell myself, try to never downplay, the impact that I have on people, right? And same for everybody that's on here, right? Jerry as well. Like you just don't downplay the impact that you have on people. And I'll give you an example of how true this is that, you and I are very, very fortunate to be part of the most amazing best practices in the world for the trades, being Nexstar. Great people in Nexstar. And I remember I was at headquarters in St. Paul doing a training, and you know Keith Mercurio just as well as I do, and he formerly with Nexstar, but still a great friend, facilitator, keynote speaker, just an awesome guy. He used to be my boss in the training world over there. And he told me a story in the cafeteria there. He's like, oh, this one time, Julian Scadden, who is now the CEO. And I think when I was told this story, he was like the implementation coach, right, where he started. And he was telling me a story about how Jay, as he calls him, busted his chops one day in the cafeteria about the dishwasher. So they have a dishwasher at HQ and they all take turns taking care of the dishes, and Keith's taking care of them. And he's just putting them away. And like I do at my own home, like, oh, a little water on that cup, it'll dry in the cupboard, right? Just put it away. And Julian's like, what are you doing, Keith? He's like, oh, I'm putting the dishes away, Jay. He's like, you got to dry them first. He's like, that's what the dishwasher does. He goes, those aren't dry. He said, grab a towel, man. I mean, come on, you got to dry them up before you put them away. He kind of looked at him funny, and Julian looks at him. He says, Keith, remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I remember Keith looking at me and goes, that son of a gun, I could, man. And it's just so profound. I've never heard it before. And it just stuck with me. So of course, then that stuck with me. And I'll tell you, I sent these guys about a month ago when the story, I'm gonna wrap this story up, when this occurred. I've used this in raising my own kids, right? And just telling them, how you do anything is how you do everything, whether it be mowing the lawn or doing your homework, you just do it right the first time, right? So my 13-year-old, who's my oldest, actually just turned 14, excuse me. I tell him this all the time. And about a month ago, he's got his first cell phone and stuff, and his cell phone was on the counter. Of course, I'm being the nosy dad, and I kind of just, hit the screen to liven it up, see if there's anything bad on there, right? And I see that he changed his home screen on his cell phone that says, how you do anything is how you do everything, on his home screen. That I felt like I won as a father at that moment. And I took a picture of his screen. I sent it to Jay and Keith, and I told him, I says, if you guys ever doubt the impact you have on people, a simple story told between you two in a cafeteria has resonated down at that time to a 13-year-old. And that's how he's living his life now. And it was a really cool moment. And I think that was an aha moment for me to go, as a leader, don't downplay the effect you have on people, 4 people removed from you, because it just keeps trickling down, because it just absolutely does. And so cool story. I just wanted to share that with you because it kind of rejuvenated me to keep fighting the fight, right? Keep doing what I'm doing because I know it's affecting people in a positive way.
Well, Brad, I think I don't normally do this. I'll let Jared do this, but I think you've officially named the podcast here. I appreciate you sharing. That was absolutely awesome stuff there. I look at it in a very similar vein, and I ask our leadership team this question as it relates to what you just said. What would your actions look like if you knew that you were going to affect that person 4 people away? Right. What would your actions look like if you knew that you weren't there to impact that service tech, but what would your actions look like to impact that service tech's children? What would it look like to impact someone else's kid, like in your example, that they probably, at the time of that story, Heck, he was probably what, 6, maybe? I mean, not very old, not old enough to understand that, but yet because of what you took from the story, has made an impact. So that is leadership. It is acting in a way each and every day that resembles who you want to show up as in the world and who you want to impact in the world. As Maxwell says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I think that story pretty much illustrates the impact of leadership. And those two guys in that story, I'm sure there'll be some fellow Next Star listeners know those guys are, I mean, I feel like anytime they speak, it's like, it takes me a minute to comprehend. Like, whoa, guys, slow down. You guys are way ahead of me on this. I need to write that down and figure that out. But that is just that's just really, really good stuff. I appreciate you jumping in and sharing that story, which is great. So with that, we're getting close, kind of on time here, and that may be a great place to kind of wrap up. Because if you take anything from the podcast, please take this and run with it. I guess as we close, is there anything else? That was pretty powerful stuff there, but anything else you'd like to share with the listeners as it relates to things you've learned about leadership, things that you'd like to leave as hopefully impacting others?
Yeah, I think just be great, right? Surround yourself with like-minded people. It helps, right? When you don't have that negative influence bouncing off you all the time, it's much easier not to get into that headspace. And that's intentional. It doesn't mean, leave your friends, leave your family, quit talking with them, but do your best as well to have them maybe see the light and make better choices as well. Because everything is a choice, 100%. And I know anybody that's listening to your podcast is probably on their way, right? I mean, people that deliberately listen to this stuff are making that choice, right? So they need to figure out what they can do to influence those that chose not to listen to it.
Awesome stuff. Thanks again, Brad. Really appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule. I know we're right in the middle of the summer, which is typically our busiest time, but again, hopefully this will resonate with those that are listening. Again, how you do anything is how you do everything. I'm thinking about right now on my wall. To me, that's a great reminder. I too am guilty of putting away the wet dishes in the cabinet, but I can guarantee you from this point forward that I will be drying them off. So I cannot wait to tell Julian the next time I see him that I am drying the dishes because of him. With that, again, listeners, the biggest key here is never underestimate the impact that you have on people. Brad said it, and I think that it is one of the most powerful things that you can do. So as you go about today and you keep growing out there each and every day, remember that you have an impact on people with your actions, your words, and your thoughts. Thanks again. Until next time, we'll see you.